Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Naromo Osaige. I work with Access Now. I'm the Africa Policy and Advocacy Manager. One interesting thing about me, I play the violin. I learned how to play the violin when I was about 13 years old, and I've been playing it since then. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Blessing Ajimoti, and I am a digital transformation consultant with an organization called Public Digital. An interesting thing about me, I can crochet.
Sorry,
I can crochet.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Ichdaye Shetima. I work with Gatefield. I'm a policy and research analyst. One interesting thing about me is that I used to be a radio host. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Precious Nwadike. I am an analyst with Tech Hub Advisory. So interesting fact about me. I can sing in my mind. But another fact, I don't know if this is interesting, maybe a bit weird. I like the smell of petrol.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colin Young. I work with Youth for Change Initiative. I'm a senior project officer. Interesting thing about me, I love dancing.
So we have a singer, we have a dancer. So yeah, that's a good combo.
I greet everybody. Waris Animbo, Raf Beppo, the Executive Director, Center for Empowerment and Advocacy. One interesting thing about me, since I came to Abuja, a lot of people don't know I'm a chief in the village.
Chief. Okay, if you want a cattle, you know where to go.
Good morning. My name is Busola Ajibola. I work with the CJID. I like playing in the rain, walking in the rain.
All right, then. Hello, sir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe. I work with the Media Rights Agenda in Lagos. Perhaps understandably, I'm very analog.
Good morning, all. My name, I write for Daily Independent Newspapers. Interesting thing about me, I think I like food. I like eating good food.
My name is Samson Elijah. I write for Leadership News. Interesting thing about me, I love cooking.
Good morning. My name is Collins Nabife. I work with Nigerian Tribune newspaper. The interesting about me is that I like money.
My name is Joseph Moses. I work with Atlantic. I like cooking too.
Good morning. My name is Imefon Okon. I'm a reporter with Clayview TV. I love eating catfish. Better sauce inside and chill malt.
My name is Omotola Joy. I work with the Frederick Chibet Stiftung Nigerian office. And one thing about me is I like food.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Abidemi, and I currently work as an international development practitioner. I'm here as a rapporteur. One interesting thing about me, I speak about 3 international languages.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Oyeni Kenneth, and I work as the communications officer for Paradigm Initiative. One interesting thing about me, I speak 1 language and a half.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Blessing. I work with Blueprints newspaper. One interesting thing about me is that I like to travel.
My name is Shamsuddin Abdurazak. I lead the team at Glowing Minds Initiative for Human Development. One interesting thing about me is I like eating.
Hello, good morning. My name is Irene and I work for Rapid TV as a correspondent. So one good thing I love doing is I love singing and I love touring. Okay, I should sing for you all.
But you're working out. We're supposed to meet you as well.
I go by market too.
But you did not challenge the other.
Okay,
speaker.
you said I
That's not
should
fair.
sing.
That-
Is there anybody that I need to challenge?
Oh, so she's throwing a challenge. If there is anybody that no, if you want to compete.
And I wish you all a lovely conference.
We have one of the facilitators joining us online. He is ready and he will have to leave by 11. So now we have to reshuffle things around and give him the chance to speak. But before that, let me just go through the line of activities that we have for today. There will be a welcoming remarks by Benga Shesan, the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative. This session is coming later, perhaps after the tea break. Then a quick context setting. Then we will have the review of the Nigerian AI strategy by Dayo Ashonibari, is the facilitator joining us online. And then we are going to have a conversation, then a tea break, then another session on the draft digital economy and e-governance bill, the objectives and the anticipated outcome. Precious Inwadike is going to facilitate that session, and she is here with us in the room. And then we are going to have a conversation around the CSO position on the bill. This session is going to be facilitated by Adeboye Adegoke of Paradigm Initiative. Then we have another conversation, plenary conversation, and then post-event evaluation. So basically, this is what we will be expecting for today's digital policy engagement series. Just a quick one. The Digital Policy Engagement Series is an initiative under the auspices of Paradigm Initiative designed to facilitate in-depth dialogue and analysis on critical legislative documents that shape the digital landscape. This series will serve as a platform for stakeholders, including policymakers, civil society representatives, and other key actors, to engage in full discussion and share insights on emerging digital policy issues. This particular one, we aim to achieve the following objectives. The number one objective is to, examine the legislative documents. Delegates here are expected to critically review and discuss the potential gaps, challenges, and opportunities within the legislation. That is the AI strategy and the e-governance bill, which are going to be the center of the conversation on this episode. Also, civil society organizations this series will provide an avenue for civil society organizations to articulate their perspectives and positions on these legislative matters. This engagement ensures that diverse voices are heard and considered in the policy making processes. And the last one is fostering collaboration. By bringing together various stakeholders, this event aims to foster collaboration and build consensus on key digital policy issues, contributing to more inclusive and effective policy making. Quickly, because of the request and also the fact that we started very late, I will introduce, or rather, I will call on Dayo Ashonibari, who is joining us online, and we will be able to see him on the screen here to take us through the session on review of the Nigerian AI strategy. And there will be a chance for also a conversation in the room to discuss what will be shared by Dayo and also what is your insight, what is your position, and What are your general thoughts about that?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Dayo Ashonibare. I'm a legal practitioner and a law teacher at the Faculty of Law Based University. I'm into full-time legal practice and I pioneered the teaching of ICT law at the Faculty of Law Based University. Over this period, we've been able to develop a curriculum that focuses on emerging technologies and some emerging areas of ICT such as data protection and policy. The issue of emerging technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, as it relates to policies and regulation in respect of these various areas. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I know that I just have very little time because I already have another meeting scheduled, but because of this opportunity that the platform have given to me, I will just briefly share what I've been able to put together. I would have wanted this to be very interactive for me to be on ground, but due to circumstances beyond my control, because I have another board meeting of an organization I belong to that I need to get into now. But without using that as a platform of not trying to share a little bit of experience about the National Artificial Strategy of 2024, which is at least, I'm not sure it's even up to 2 months old now, basically. So I just want to quickly do an overview of this to now be able to set your imagination on fire on basically on the conversation that should happen on this platform today. So how have I designed this work for conversation today? What I have done is my outline of discussion. I'm just going to briefly introduce the conversation, talk about it briefly, talk about the AI strategy, objective of the AI strategy. Oh, sorry, I think I mixed up some other things here. Sorry. Okay, talk about the objective of the strategy and talk about the principles, the pillars, basically just a general overview. Look at some of the the possible key challenges that we might face in the course of having to implement the strategy. I'm very sure that you all have an idea of what the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy is all about. I know some of you are aware of a policy by NIDA at some point in 2022 and all that, but you know, this is still very, very new and very, very young in respect of when it has to do with the implementation strategy for implementation of artificial intelligence. We all know the meaning of artificial intelligence. I don't want to dabble into it, but I got some very, very important some statistics which I can't confirm here, but based on research. But from what I've been able to see is sorry, trying to get this off. Okay, so but what I've been able to see basically is that artificial intelligence on its own research shows that has been able to contribute about $15.7 trillion to the global economy. And by 2030, we're going to have about that. So this is a report by PwC and it's far back at 2018. We have a current statistic as at now. I thought I put it here. Okay, maybe I'll come to it. So we have the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy. It's an initiative aimed at harnessing the transformative potential of AI to drive sustainable development and innovation, national productivity in Nigeria. Now, we know that this strategy is something that the government have been able to put in place. The Federal Ministry of Digital Economy have been able to put in place to ensure that we have a strategy on ground. We have a plan on ground. We all know the meaning of strategy. We can't have a robust system without having a strategy, without having a plan to be able to ensure the effective implementation of this particular, and all of us will agree here in this platform that artificial intelligence is an emerging technology. It's an area that is very fundamental, and there is need basically for us to have a platform, to have a strategy to ensure we properly integrate this whole system, this whole process into our system. And that is the idea behind this whole strategy. How do we get this working? How do we get this implemented? In a couple of months, a couple of years from now, everything we do basically is going to be what? Artificial intelligence. And most people are already becoming challenged. Low self-esteem is already coming in for people that feel they can just download everything from there. It's all about me. I know we have an idea of teachers that, you know, for those of you who can flash back to your university days where you have teachers come to class and just download materials for you from their head without reference to any material. I know most of us have high difference for people like that. But we're looking at a situation where you don't need to stress yourself. You have the machine do it for you and all that. And this is where we're going to get into. Because at the end of the day, AI would practically take over everything. And that is why we're happy that we have a sensitive government that are in respect of this, that have been able to put in place this strategy to ensure the effective implementation of this aspect. So then I have a brief, which I basically say in 2024, I describe what? Watershed year for the advancement of AI. You find this in the strategy as part of the introductory aspects of the conversation. And that's one of the things I've just mentioned, basically. So the strategy itself basically sets a path to achieve the vision to be a global leader in harnessing transformative power of AI. Basically. So what we're basically looking at is we're focusing on enhancing and empowering every segment of the society through AI. So if we want to have AI in every segment of our society, whether it is healthcare, whether it's agriculture, nowadays that we now have smart cities, we have smart homes, although I've still yet to see a completely smart city in Nigeria, but I know gradually we're getting there, but we now have smart homes. Most of us at the corner of our where we are now, we can easily find out what is happening in our office. We can shut down our electronics, our devices. We are gradually getting there. These things don't just work like this. They work because we have an artificial intelligence system that is working. Don't you think you need a strategy for the implementation? Don't you think we need a strategy to ensure that we have policies and regulation that will ensure this basically works and function properly? And that is the idea behind the strategy, basically. So what is it basically, which I'm going to be looking at from this, because I don't intend to bore you. It's about 79-page document, right? About how many pages document? I've not been able to look at some very key areas that might be relevant to this conversation, and that is just it. Now, the strategy basically is divided into the following areas. We have the vision and the guideline principles. When you look at the guide strategy, it has the vision and the guideline principles, which basically talks about the objectives, the principles that will govern the implementation, the strategy that will be put in place to ensure that they are able to achieve this objective. Because, you know, a strategy is not really a policy document. It's just a guide. It's just something that should be able to direct in when it comes to this particular areas. Now, another aspect is the strategic objectives. It's another aspect of what we're going to look at it. Then we look at the strategic pillar. Very awesome. That if we're able to implement the strategic pillars, trust me, we're going to have a strategy that will work and that will ensure that the digital e-governance bill, which is yet to be a law, will be fully implemented and will definitely there is no law that doesn't have its own itch, that doesn't have its own set shortcomings. But I believe it's going to ensure that this bill becomes very, very useful. Then we have the implementation plan. We have so we have the some of the risk and mitigation strategies which have been put in place. In the course of the conversation, I'm also going to look at what are the possible challenges, and I'll try to conclude. Now, going forward, basically the vision of the strategy is basically to ensure very, very important, responsible and ethical inclusive innovation, fostering sustainable development through collaborative efforts. You can see that the strategy is already seeing a situation where you work together, just like what Paradigm Initiative is doing today. Now, it's something you have to work together, and that is what these have been able to envisage. To look at a situation where all stakeholders must come on ground, come on board to ensure how this can work. And what are the major things to ensure ethical? Ethical is very important for me as a teacher to ensure inclusive innovation, because, you know, young people usually take advantage of areas where things that are vulnerable, where what people use till date. You agree with me that even till date, there are people that don't use ATM cards, just best known to them because I don't want anybody to touch my. It's because of the security, the safety they feel. You understand? And the truth is that people still take advantage of this vulnerability. If somebody can hack your WhatsApp and be giving you stories on WhatsApp, do you think people will want to be safe using this? You understand? And that is why even up to today, I feel that's the reason why we don't still swipe our debits, our cards, our ATM cards in Nigeria, because you know there's going to be a lot of disaster. But I believe it's a process, and eventually we will get there. Now, one of the strategy that is very, very important is it is focused towards building a sustainable and world-class AI ecosystem. It's aimed at having this ecosystem that would ensure that we have an AI-driven system in Nigeria that any country could point to and say, you know what, Nigeria has a mechanism that is working for them in respect of AI. And what are the major focus in respect of this? To ensure that you have partnership with collaborators, with academia. Academia play very key role in this area, because this is where you have most of these young people that will ensure that this thrive. Do you understand? So they play a key role. You need to continuous training program, just like we have here. You understand, industrial academia partnership, and ensure that funding mechanism is in place. That is what the strategy look at. And I've been able to highlight talent and youths. This is one of the areas that this strategy wants to look out for. Thriving startup ecosystem, to ensure we have an ecosystem, a startup system that works, that is predicated on artificial intelligence, that is predicated on developing talents of young persons and all that. So one of the strategies is to ensure that we have this sustainable, world-class artificial intelligence ecosystem in Nigeria. And that is one of the aim of the strategy. Another part of it is accelerated AI adoption and sector transformation. Now, this is a very, very fundamental pillar, because it talks about adoption of various sectors, ensuring that there is transformation of industry, propelling economic growth, ensuring that locally led AI innovation, especially in respect of AI, agriculture, healthcare, and education, right? We're having a lot of AI-related innovation in respect of that, and been able to ensure this. But how does this strategy work? How this particular strategy work? One of the ways is that summits and hackathons, organization must continue to do this. Government must continue to engage in this to ensure that this basically works. Just like summits like this, stakeholder engagement like this, continue to have hackathon, especially among young people, to ensure that they continue to put together this and ensure a partnership with government, connect with research institution, business organization, just to ensure that this knowledge is transferred, this system is transferred in its own, basically. So that's basically what this pillar is focused on. Another one is ensuring a responsible and ethical AI development. This strategy is very key on ethical development, right? It's related, almost related to the next pillar, right? Because if you have an environment that is not regulated, if you have an environment that is not driven by ethical standards, if you have an environment that is not driven by principles, it's going to be abused. Right, it's going to be abused. We have had physical interaction and people are still being cheated. Now, in a situation where system generates, and the truth is that people will take advantage of this, because at the end of the day, when something happens, who do you hold responsible? Because artificial intelligence, basically, there is machine system, machine learning system, that for you to hold somebody accountable in this system is a very difficult thing. And that is why people just use the platform to be able to commit or meet up their own selfish reason. So this particular pillar is, let us have a robust system. Let us have an ethical framework. Let's have a policy document. Let's be able to follow up this. Let's have something that we call a national AI ethics principle and impact assessment that will govern and regulate this space. Because if this space is not regulated, and that's why most of us are happy about the digital and the e-governance platform. We're excited about it. Hopefully, we hope it sees the light of the day and all that. Because although it has some of its own some of its own problems in respect of that, but we're excited about it, because these are part of the things that will ensure that this strategy works effectively. And I'm happy that this is already coming on board now to ensure effective implementation of this. So it's a very, very important pillar. It's a very, very important pillar that will ensure that this strategy works. You agree with me that if we don't have principles, if we don't have ethical or framework, that this space will definitely not been able to, will not survive, basically. And that is why the strategy has taken in place and ensure that for we to have development in the AI industry, for we to have a robust system in Nigeria, we need to have an ethical framework. We need to have an impact assessment to be able to monitor and find out whether this is actually working or not. Now, just the same thing I said is related to the next pillar, AI governance. We need to have a governance system. We need to know who is who. We need to know who are the managers, who are the people that ensure that these principles work. Because we cannot have ethical, we cannot have effective AI system, a robust platform, if there is no governance. When we talk about governance, we're talking about management, we're talking about regulation, we're talking about a system where you ensure that everyone is being regulated to ensure a safe usage of that particular platform. Now, what are the implementation plan when you look at it? Now, government intends to have like a governance structure, which is already in place already, you understand, and to ensure that you'll be able to assist in the coordination mechanism. And at the end of the day, by the time you have this governance structure, now government have been able to say, okay, we will have key milestones that from this particular period to this particular period, this is what we have been able to achieve in this implementation strategy. These are the timelines. These are the ways we can be able to work to meet up this AI strategy and ensure implementation. And most of you will agree with me because during the course of the introduction, I heard some of you talking about working with this organization. And you know the importance of M&E in any strategy you're working on. You need to find out there needs to be an effective monitoring and evaluation framework to be able to check this. And you know, this one is very important: resource control, resource allocation, and mechanism to ensure the effective implementation of this platform. Now, who are the stakeholders? I think for me, I think NITDA NITDA has done a very good job because they've been pushing for all this while. There is still a stakeholder. We know the main center itself for artificial intelligence, which is the director and leader. We have the NCC, they have a key role to play because they deal with telecommunication and there's a lot to be done. You can't use any device without internet, right? They provide this service. They have the ISPs under their regulations, so they are a major stakeholder. I brought in the Ministry of Education because education is key in the implementation of this strategy. This strategy cannot be effectively implemented if you don't have the education sector to come in. And I specifically brought in NUC in this area because NUC is responsible for developing a curriculum for most universities in Nigeria. We need to develop curriculum that are related to AI so that by the time most of our young people, our students have curriculum in respect of this, have degrees in respect of this, it makes the implementation, it makes the integration into the society very easy. So it's very, very important. Academic institution, private organization, law enforcement, because we need their stakeholders. If you don't carry them along, they will start arresting people anyhow. That's why you need to carry them along. You understand? Because before you know, now somebody does something with AI and is doing well at the end of the day, and probably the person is successful and probably has a dreadlocks on and wears short knicker and all that, you know, the next thing that will happen is that the person will be arrested. So if you don't carry them along, you don't make them a major stakeholder in the implementation of this strategy, definitely you're going to have a problem. And our boss, I brought them back because they have been driving this, the Federal Ministry of Communication, Innovation, and Economy. They are very, very key. The Honorable Minister has been very enthusiastic about this area, and that is a very, very support. So very, very important stakeholders. I have some others that I ought to have put, but I think this is very key for me to have these stakeholders if we want this to work. And that most of them form part of the governance structure of the implementation of the strategy. Definitely we will have challenges. It's not an easy platform. Infrastructure, we don't have the infrastructure. That's the truth. Well, I know fiber optics is growing really big in Abuja and probably Lagos. There's no fiber optics in most of these other environments. Yes, we have good internet. Yes, we clamor for 5G. We have 5G in Abuja. We have 5G in some other environment. What of the other rural areas? It's not only meant for the cities, right? I visited a small city in Bandung in Indonesia at some point. It's a village. Bandung is a village. If you have the time, just go ahead and Google it. You understand? You will find out Bandung is a village. You understand? At some point when I was in that village, you can't just get a cab because it's a smart city, completely smart city, because everything is working, right, in respect of technology. So for you, even the scooters they use, before you can use it, you need to have an app to be able to do that, to be able to flag. You can't just go by the road, just like for me, that I'll just go by the road and flag down a scooter. It doesn't work. And that place is actually a village. So we need to, and I asked one of the young persons that I met there, I said, so what happened? How did this happen? He said, no, that is just a young man. I was really excited. A young man that was made is he a minister or something? He just came and brought mobile devices for almost everybody in that community and made it very affordable. And that's how they were able to transform Bandung into a digital smart city. Infrastructure is key. If we don't have infrastructure, the implementation might be just in specific areas. And we want Nigeria to be like a global hub when we talk about artificial intelligence in Africa. Just like the way we are leading in telecommunication in Africa, we're a reference point in Africa, we need to be able to ensure that we have this platform. Then another one is we need our laws and regulations, cybercrime, funding, very, very important, skill and workforce. Ethical concern is a major issue. Data security, rapid technology change, orientation. These are very, very possible challenges that we might face that will end up affecting the implementation of this strategy. How do I conclude? If we intend to be a global leader responsible for ethical AI innovation, implementation of this strategy is not an option. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and that is the little I have to share this morning.
All right. Thank you so much, Dayo. This is quite an insightful session. What do you think? Are we on the right track with our AI strategy in the country? What are your general thoughts based on what has been shared by Dayo, and also, your personal thoughts about the document? Someone is asking, I want to know what gaps Dayo has seen in the strategy. But Dayo is not here, but we have you, the experts in the field. What are your general thoughts? What gaps have you seen in this strategy?
Thank you so much. Like you said, it's a dialogue. For me, basically, the truth of the matter is there's generally low awareness campaign concerning AI. I wasn't in Abuja then. I traveled. I learned there was a meeting with the Ministry of the Digital concerning. That's the only meeting I've had. So as somebody always upwardly mobile when it comes to CSO work and movement. So if at this level I can say that I know little or nothing about AI, the strategy, the document, has it been domesticated? What are the plan? Because I was at a forum I was, somehow AI filtered into the conversation. So this thing should be inculcated or infused into a curriculum down to the primary or secondary school level so that they begin to get this awareness, begin to get this knowledge from onset, like some of us are becoming old school and well, practically not aware of these things. So, but none of this thing is happening. No sensitization, no campaign, no awareness and all that. But still we're saying we're doing AI. I want to join the rest of the world to meet up and all. So that's a gap I see. Although I had some questions I wanted to ask, but since this was not around, so, but that's what I can see as at the onset. So if you can't get the foundation right, then what are we talking about? Everything is going to be haywire.
So if I get you correctly, you are talking about proper inclusion when drafting the strategy and all of that. You feel like many stakeholders are not involved in the drafting processes and all of that. Did I get that?
After the draft, we're supposed to do a drive too. Everybody cannot be in the room when it's been this strategy is being drafted. Everybody definitely can be on the table. But so long as we have gotten a pathway that this is where we want to move, then it behoves on the drivers or those that think this is the way to go to carry the rest along in terms of campaign, in terms of awareness creation, in terms of strategy implementation and all that. But so far, we're not seeing that, so it's quite challenging.
All right, thank you. And with regards to your question, please, if you can just write it down and let me have it so that when Dayo is back, I'll just like read out the question so that we won't forget.
Thank you, Sani. I'm wondering whether this event is for civil society by design, or it's supposed to have other stakeholder groups, because the issue we're discussing, while civil society may have a role, I don't think it's the key actor. And therefore, it would have been important for us to engage with other stakeholders, particularly government, maybe also the tech community. Now, it's a fairly long document, so I will not pretend that I've read it line by line, but I've done a quick scan through. And my initial reflections are that ultimately my fear is that the biggest impediment to this strategy will be the government itself. Why do I say this? Of course, I think the strategy recognizes that it requires policy intervention. It requires infrastructure to support deployment and use of AI and all of that. But one of the most critical elements, I think, is public confidence. And we're really developing this strategy and perhaps planning to deploy artificial intelligence at a time when the government itself appears to be undermining public confidence in the internet and in the use of digital tools. And that's my biggest worry, because when you're relentlessly after people who are trying to use digital platforms, online platforms, and so on, at the same time, you want to encourage people to deploy artificial intelligence across a wide range of sectors, economic, social, cultural, and all of that. It's going to be very difficult for those two to sit side by side. So it would have been important for us to have this conversation with government to say, what is the level of commitment towards creating the right kind of environment that would encourage people to key into this? How do you build public confidence in the online environment, the digital environment, for people to really dig deep into their innovative spirits? I fear that ultimately, if we are all afraid that we do something innovative, we're going to find government on our backs, then it's not going to work. But there are issues of infrastructure. I mean, we're talking of artificial intelligence as if the basics already exist, and a lot of that doesn't. So there's just so much to talk about. But unfortunately, those of us in the room at the moment would just appear to be talking to ourselves without any real possibility that we can influence some of these changes that are required to make this work. Those are my initial reflections. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Edit. And yeah, we're supposed to have other stakeholders in the room. However, what we are also trying to achieve, one of the outputs of this meeting is that we will, document the response of the CSOs, for example, and then have a separate conversation with the government.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to what you were saying about the relevance of having this conversation first at the civil society level. I mean, I think from just looking at the policy, it's looking at the policy and from understanding AI, it's obvious that AI is, the intention of the policy is to integrate AI into our work, into our societies, and inevitably into our lives. And when you have that, when you have AI or even any other kind of technology integrated into human lives, then it means human rights are involved. And then it means that civil society considering or contemplating these risks to human lives, contemplating these risks to human rights is critical to the conversation. It's critical to any steps that government wants to take in developing this policy. I don't think that it's the sort of thing that, because I also see that this happens a lot of the times. We finish, passing a law or making a policy, and then we consider how this policy affects human rights. And I think like that kind of backwards approach, like taking it from the back, from the reverse side, rather than building a human rights centered approach in developing the policy. I think that that can be detrimental. So that was just on that point. But the question that I had, and what I'd been thinking about is, first, a disclaimer. I only saw the policy document a few days ago, so please, I may be wrong. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but it did seem to me that a lot of the documents does not necessarily point to the specific use cases of AI. And I think that that's important, because sometimes it feels like we're talking abstracts. Like, what exactly is AI? What are we talking about? And I think like without putting a finger on the specific use cases that we're discussing, it's very difficult to decide, okay, so who are the stakeholders? Okay, so what are the risks here? What are the challenges here? What are the ethical issues? For example, if there's, one use case of AI is in predictive policing, right? In using AI to determine people's patterns, to determine people's actions in society, and to decide who is likely to be a criminal, which is a very, concerning use of AI, but we've already seen it's being used in some countries. So is the question, is it the question of, are we going to start using AI for predictive policing in Nigeria? If yes, what are the risks involved with that? If yes, what are the challenges? If yes, what are the stakeholders? If we want to do this, should we be doing this in the first place? Is it right to do this? So I think like maybe it's also useful in this conversation if we can narrow it down, but perhaps someone who has read the documents better than I have will have a better idea of that. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for your reflection. That's a very good one, the specific use cases and, the vagueness of document, rather just there is no specific pointers and all of that.
Yeah, so I also just wanted to speak to how if the document does not expressly make pointers about how AI will be integrated into our daily lives, I really think we will struggle with a lot of human rights violations. And here I'm speaking to, for example, where we cannot expressly say that AI is being deployed, we already struggle with challenges like surveillance. We already struggle with, breach of data privacy. And so when we then now have a policy that then, allows the use of artificial intelligence, that do not really expressly state that, okay, so this is how this will be used. These are the ethical boundaries that within which it must be deployed. And then when we begin to experience those violations, so where does that take us? So this is something that I would have loved to see in the document. And because of the ecosystem where I work, for example, which is the media and journalism, so I'm wondering, so how is AI, the use of face detection, how is that going to be used against human rights activists? Where anytime I use my phone, there is, I don't know, so some AI tools that have been designed to collect some data and then continue to use that data to build on my profile. In terms of safety, what does that mean for, say, people who do accountability work mainly? What does it mean for the limit of breach of people's right to privacy. I wish the document was really, like, let's know that there are some thoughts going on in that regard, and then it's been anticipated, and there are already some thinking around how these issues are going to be addressed.
Right. Thank you. The issue of missing some elements of human rights protection, the issues of privacy and data collection and all of that. How are they going to be addressed in the strategy? So yes.
Good morning. Okay, please, I would like to ask, how does the bill address the issue of the data privacy and data consent? I know that we have a bill, whether the one that have been signed concerning data privacy bill. So how does the AI bill, this one, address that issue also? Okay, another question is, what impact will the bill have on the employment and the workforce development in the country? That is number two. Number three, how will the effectiveness of this AI bill be evaluated over time?
Okay, Khadija, you can go. You can just unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Please confirm that you can hear me.
Yes,
hello,
we can.
Peculiar. That's a lovely dress. Okay. Peculiar just distracted me from what I wanted to say. So I wanted to contribute a bit to the conversation. So I wanted to start by saying that if you go a bit lower into the document, it acknowledged some risks. And part of that risks is the possibility of, there was a way the young man put it, I'm trying to find the word in documents, but really it's risk to employment of individuals. It also mentioned data privacy risk. So we can definitely give kudos to the documents for acknowledging the risk factors. It's mentioned a few of those and its mitigation strategies. So if I know that it was sent to a few of you, it also tried to measure what the impact of some of these risks are. But something that I did not see was the outright mention of human rights issues. And I don't think that I saw anything regarding surveillance specifically. And I think those are important things that needed to be acknowledged in the strategy. When Naro mentioned use cases, that's very important because it really does feel like we're speaking in abstracts. I know that Paradigm Initiative released a research in 2021 about how AI was being deployed in 3 African countries. One of those countries was, are you guys still with me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so one of those countries was Nigeria, and one of the ways that we've seen AI being deployed in Nigeria a lot is chatbots, especially with applications that we use often, such as banks and food ordering apps. I don't know what they're called. So very often when you're trying to make a complaint to a bank, a lot of them have tried to deploy artificial intelligence in that regard. And as at the time the research was deployed, we had only verifiably 73 organizations that had deployed the use of artificial intelligence in Nigeria. But mind you, this was in 2021. I imagine that that number has increased and will continue to do so, as at the time it was deployed, I don't think any of us knew ChatGPT. And I really think that our lives look very different when it comes to technology than it did a few years ago. I know that to a lot of people, this isn't important, but it is becoming increasingly important. And while, unfortunately, government continues to be a hard nut to crack, a difficult set of people to reach, it's important for us to have, I guess, a civil society position, for us to be knowledgeable on these issues. I know someone said that he doesn't know much about this. This is an opportunity to learn a bit, so that whenever any of us find ourselves in rooms where some of these decisions are being taken, we are able to we're able to make informed contributions. What we're going to do at the end of the day, of course, is try to share whatever your contributions are directly with the government institutions involved. Now, to Dayo, I was wondering about, there is a Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics in Nigeria. There's also a center with a similar name like that in Calabar, that is based just in Calabar. My question is how those two centers or organizations are being integrated into this strategy. How exactly is that going to work? How are they going to get their funding? What is their role here? But yeah, those were some of the thoughts that were boggling my mind. And I hope that the rapporteurs are taking intense notes. Thank you.
Like that person rightly said, so recently we developed an audio chatbot that we use in verifying misinformation that are shared by politicians, usually on radio. So what that it's like download radio conversations, it's transient, right? So people say all sort of things on radio, and then before you know it, it's gone. So nobody can hardly go back to fact check what was said, whether it was true, whether it was false. But what we tried to do was to then build an AI tool where people can go back to and look for historical data about radio programs, right? And then try to verify what claims were true, what claims were false. I think to a large extent, so it's been deployed in Ghana and some in Nigeria. But one of the challenges that I think currently exists is that even though on radio, so there's a challenge of language limitations, right? So right now, so it can detect or transcribe some languages, but not many languages. And then if you train AI to verify in Yoruba language or in Ghana, I don't know what, I really can't tell the number of languages are spoken in Ghana, but in a specific Ghana language. So what then happens where someone on radio is mixing languages? So the chat box wasn't trained to be able to understand languages that are, and at the same time, I'm mixing it with Yoruba. So for example, that is a limitation. I think one very important learning to take there is acknowledging that AI cannot take over the gatekeeping roles that humans have to play with regards to verification, right? So I'm not sure we probably would get there, but it definitely will take time before we could develop an AI tool that can speak how many languages in the world, or even in Nigeria alone. I think that's really going to be, so we'll probably start by looking for general, just maybe start with Pidgin and just keep building up on what is available. But again, what is also clear is that while AI is going to be constituting certain risk with regards to deepfakes, dissemination of more misinformation, perhaps targeted malinformation, we will still have to rely on those same AI tools. Like we also still have to learn to use the same AI approach, AI tools, to counter the not so great part of it.
Sorry, since the mic is already here. So a number of comments have been made which allude to something, but we've not addressed it specifically. And I thought maybe it's a question we also need to put forward fairly clearly. Has there been thinking around how an AI strategy could be deployed around law enforcement and security? Because that is one area where potentially there's a lot of risk. But the document does not really speak directly to this issue of law enforcement, what role it might play in terms of security or national security. Is it the intention that that's a separate conversation that needs to be had about deployment of artificial intelligence in Nigeria, and therefore what strategy needs to be developed? Or is this, can this be interpreted to mean that government does not intend to use AI for law enforcement and security issues? So I would also like us to put this as part of, our questions and reflections to perhaps the ministry in the first instance. I don't know whether law enforcement, security and intelligence agencies were involved in the development of this strategy and what their input has been, but it's not reflected in the document. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that. These two concerns were raised with regards to policing, and now you have added the involvement of law enforcement agencies, which I believe is a very good one. Yes.
So good morning, everyone, and thanks to the feedback and submission from colleagues. Just like Mr. Edet had mentioned, I think the people in the room will only, from my assumption, or just what I assume, the conversation would drive in the human rights direction because of the people in the room, first of all. And just going by what Khadija also mentioned, I tried to do a search. Human rights only appears like 3 times on the document. It might not be a big problem, but like my own observation, again, around the documents with other policies and acts and every other thing is the clear definition of terms in these documents. I think it's a huge gap. So we don't even have what this means. It's just broad at the top level. Somebody picks it and it's like an intellectual document, or somebody mentioned them. Too technical, basically, abstract rather. Again, the risk page, if you look at the AI risk, there's no mitigation around that. It just mentioned this risk. Now we're thinking about deep fakes and every other thing you can think about, misinformation. The document doesn't even specify how to address these issues. It just says this at the concerns, but no mitigation to that. I think lastly would be for me on the human rights side, which I think it's just linked to the ethical AI kind of conversation at the broader level again, which needs to be brought down to what my village people will think about AI, So like that high level kind of, we need to understand like, this is a national document. If people in communities need to understand this, you need to break down the definitions clearly. Thank you.
So I don't know if I totally understand maybe the technical part, the very technical. If I captured that correctly, would your suggestion be that we also have like, okay, first to simplify it, and second to have like an abridged version of that document so that everybody could be able to definition. Thank you. Okay, yes, to define that. That has been captured. Thank you so much for sharing. Any other reflection? Perhaps let me check if there's anything from online.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Shamsuddin Abdurazak, and I lead the team at Glowing Minds Initiative. So one of the concerns we've actually had before now is as regards so period to this time, it has been conversation around digital divide, and we yet to actually close that digital divide. We now have AI in the room. And talking about that, one of the things is it has to still do with education. So when we want to look at AI, we'll look at it from the point of education. It has actually changed the landscape of education. So how does the strategy now, we need to look at how the strategy covers the mode at which education is being delivered to young people or in our schools in Nigeria. So we need to consider that. So if at all, I think the implementation aspect of it is not yet captured. So in implementing the strategy now, we need to see how that particular one is going to go down and trickle down to our education system. The person who spoke on the document earlier was actually talking about how it has actually modified education, but then we need to look down to see how it trickles into, yes, how education is being delivered. And there is always two issues in the room when we talk about digital divide. One has to do with the content itself, which is the technology. Then the next is the infrastructure. We're still having, what's it called? The broadband penetration is not even yet circulating the whole of the country. So we're moving back and forth. When Pantami was the minister, it was a different ball game. And now we hope to have actually advanced, but yet there are still a lot of gaps in that area. Because when we always want to look at the deployment of all the technology, AI, our own context here in Nigeria, how fast is the government ready to deploy supporting structure to actually aid the use of those this thing? Because we have a lot of during NITDA had a lot of infrastructural development they deployed in the last administration. If you go back now, some of those laptops and all those things are being carted away in majority aspect or parts of the country. So, and we saw what happened in the protest. So we need to also look at, while it's actually a good thing that we already have the strategy and we have the document, that we need to look at the implementation aspect of it, especially as regards education and how we are willing, number one, to do it from the government. Number two is the people we actually wanted to develop this document for. How are they really even aware that, okay, something big is in the room that's actually changed the landscape of things currently? So these are the conversations I think we should be having. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. So far, I think this is the only comment we have gotten with to digital divide, and I think it's very, very important that we highlight that as part of the submission. Any other comments, perhaps? Any challenges you foresee? Any gaps, perhaps? Any opportunity as well that?
Thank you very much. I think AI is here to stay. AI is the way to go. AI is the future. There's no debate about that. The debate or the issues around it, like my very good friend have stated, is we need to upskill. We need to upscale in terms of the usage, and also considering cultural inclinations, orientation. Most of the time, what I observe in terms of, and in response also to what someone said, you cannot anything that concerns public. I think the CSO and some of us are already IT expert before we became CSO. So it's a combination of or a gamut of events. So I personally think that what we do most time is copy and paste in Nigeria. We don't actually look at critically with the eyes of experts or subject matter experts to sieve down what is the area that will benefit us, the way to, we'll just do hook, line, and sinker, and most times we'll end up in the doldrum. So I think that our cultural inclination, our orientation as a people should be also considered in terms of implementation and all that going forward. Thank you.
Yes. So the question you asked, which we really haven't responded to, I just wanted to reprise it so that it's not lost. Basically around the issue of risk and mitigation strategies. So the way I view what we're doing is trying to improve on the document in order to ensure that it's effective, that it really works. And if there are risks associated with deployment of AI that may discourage or scare people from either using it or endorsing its use, then that becomes a problem. So it's important that we systematically identify all of the possible risks. Maybe what we have in the document right now that I mentioned are not the only ones. And then we insist that there should be a process of developing mitigation strategies for those risks. So can we also come up with some process of how do we identify other risks that may not have been captured already, and what should the process be? I may identify a risk, but really don't have an idea of how that risk can be mitigated, but other people may have some ideas. So how do we go about that process of identifying any risk that so far has not been identified or captured, and then developing mitigation strategies so that we actually work against them and torpedoing the strategy? So I just thought we should also put that in focus so that we don't lose it.
Can I assume nobody actually raised? Okay, yeah. So okay, so I know that some of us actually did read that document. So perhaps in line with Mr. Edit shared is, so far, even if you didn't read the document from A to Z, for example, so far, what risks do you see, perhaps, even not in the document, what risks do you see that might arise during the implementation of this strategy? It doesn't have to be in the document. You can also maybe use other case studies outside Nigeria, because that could help. Oh, so we have Kingsley. Kingsley, you can actually unmute yourself and share with us your thoughts.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for this conversation, on the AI strategy. So I have two talking points. First, as a continuation from what the points that Mr. Edet made, and other something totally different. First of all, I read through the document, and I want to comment on the aspect of labor. Now, when we talk about AI, what comes basically to people's mind, especially on labor, is the loss of jobs, people, job displacement. But there's less conversation as to what I call labor protection. Let's say, for instance, there was an instance that happened in Kenya some times ago where people that work in building algorithms. Now, if you have probably worked at any sector where algorithm is being built, you will see the kind of exposure that your eyes have to do, screen hours and so on. And we see that, many persons, there were will I call it in quotes, abuse of labor, and people were not even meant to disclose, what they were going through, and they were less paid. So I think part of the things that we need to talk about when it comes to AI, upskilling, and job would be, how do we protect the labor in Nigeria, especially how do we protect labor and exploitation Nigeria, especially when you are employing Nigerian youth that are skilled in algorithm building, algorithm auditing, that's skilled in programming. How are we going to protect these people, that they have fair working condition and are not subjected to several risks that, some document they have signed will not be able to let them, to disclose it. The other talking point I have is on the data infrastructure. Now, the fact is, for us to, because an AI strategy talks about step-by-step way you can actually implement AI, right, in the community, in the society, or in the country. But a major issue that we have when it comes to the building of AI, or the rampant use of AI in Nigeria, is on the availability of data. And you see, availability of data is not a thing that NITDA could do alone, or a thing that the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy can do alone. So you see that in some sector, AI use will be prevalent, and in some other sector, AI use will not be prevalent. Now, the idea about this uneven availability of AI is not because there is no skill, but many persons have brilliant ideas. Many sectors want to build AI to make work effective, but the sector in charge of this thing, probably the ministry, they are not releasing data. Data are not available. So in the strategy, I think one of the things that needs to be spelled out is how do we have like a cross collaboration of sectors, and how is data available for organizations, for companies to build AI. I know we're going to come up with ethical frameworks, risk impact assessment, algorithm auditing, and all the likes. But before you can even go into risk impact assessment, there must even be the AI that you want to assess. There must be those things. So as much as we are talking about upskilling, we're talking about data infrastructure, we're talking about building tech talent, we're talking about education, we're talking about strategy, policy, but most importantly, the fuel that the ingredient that fuels AI, which is the data. There must be strategic means at which this data is available for us to even have this AI, prevalent and being used in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kingsley. That's a lot of points, and thanks for. Well, this is quite an unconventional agenda, because we have the activity and then we are having now the opening remarks. But anyways, I will invite the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative to give us the opening remark of the event. Thank you very much. Can I please have a round of applause?
I was here earlier, but I think the team had to make a decision that, because we're running two parallel events, a decision that I should do what I think we will now call midday remarks, definitely not opening remarks anymore, very clearly. Okay. The good news is that this is a better time to speak. Having listened to some of the conversations that we have had, the first part of the conversations that we're having now is on the AI strategy. And first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone for being here. I strongly believe that the reason you're joining this conversation, when Sani said, who has read the document, I'm not surprised that we haven't read in full. Documents are not the problem with Nigeria. We know that. Implementation is a real challenge. It's a beautiful document. It's a long document. If you're not paid to read long documents, you may be tempted to speak. But why is it critical for us to have this conversation? A few reasons. One of them is that we have now told the world that we have an AI strategy. Just yesterday, I was in a meeting. This is a global meeting hosted in Latin America, and we were having conversations, and it was made obvious that Nigeria is now on the map as far as AI is concerned, because we've announced that we have an AI strategy. We have a center for AI and robotics. And I think Khadija had mentioned earlier that we actually have two different institutions, but you shouldn't be surprised. There's a reason we have the Orosanye report in Nigeria. Two different international development partners have reached out to us to ask if they should support the AI strategy in Nigeria. And that tells me something. It means, number one, there's hesitation. The hesitation is because we announced a center for AI robotics many years ago. We've announced so many public documents before, and this is where you and I then become important. This is where we document. We have this kind of conversation we're having here today, and it doesn't stop here. This conversation needs to feed back to the implementing agency, which is, of course, the ministry, NITA, and other institutions, is that this time around, we shouldn't stop at the theory of just discussing. I'm sure many of you are also aware that it's not just a Nigerian conversation. The African Union has also now taken this on. In June, the ministers of ICT and communications met in Accra and adopted what is called the Continental AI Strategy. Africa loves beautiful documents, and we have them. The AU has adopted that in July, and in August, the first workshop to discuss implementation happened. But like I said earlier, one of the things I'm happy about is that we're talking about, I picked two things that I trust that even if that's all the feedback we give to the ministry, it's important. Number one is the glossary of terms. If you don't define what something is, even for our own internal documents at Paradigm Initiative, my team members will tell you, when we develop a new policy, the first comment I make is, what is the definition? Because otherwise, if you don't define, it can mean something different. And that's why for many of our laws, by the way, we have arguments. In the former Cybercrime Act of 2015, not the new one, 2024, even the new one, there's still a few vague things. In section 24, you say something is cyber stalking and people use it to arrest journalists. That's because there's a lot of vagueness, and I'm glad that we've given that feedback. There should be definitions. Apart from definitions, something that is also important is that we need to ask ourselves, what do we do when? How do we do it? And who is in charge? So we can ask questions. And as civil society room, I'm sure you know that we're very good at asking questions. The second part of the day, we'll discuss digital economy bill. I am quite excited that there is a bill on digital economy. There's been some pushback by certain people because the bill touches on many things. But I'm actually glad, because what it does is that it introduces an opportunity for us to have a conversation, to see into the mind of the policymakers in terms of what they are thinking as far as the digital economy is concerned. And any time to engage in Nigeria, the time is now. So that you're here today discussing the bill in the second, for the second half of the day is important, because right now there are many things going on. Over the last 2 days, we had conversations with law enforcement, prosecutors, here in Abuja. And I made it very clear, in a democratic country where law enforcement is calling protesters criminals, there is danger. And if there's any time to engage with government policy, it is now. Because what you may not know is that, and I'm sure you know already, the biggest threat is not even to citizens alone. The biggest threat is to the civic space. And once the civic space is already closing, if you cannot protest, and I say it very clearly everywhere, if people announce the dates of their protests for you in advance, you should be grateful. If people announce and say August 1 to 10, it is going to be days of rage, whatever it is called, you should be grateful. Now they have announced October, fearless in October, be grateful. The worst of protests are the ones that Bola Tinubu and others who rioted, not protested in the past, did. Not announced, and they just show up. So if there's any time we need to engage with policy, with decisions coming from Abuja, and by Abuja, I mean executive, legislation and judiciary, it is now. Because when we do give feedback, the worst that can happen is that it's not taken on board, but we have the opportunity to say, we have made the suggestion. And that's why I'm grateful that we're here today. A huge thanks, because I know for you to come for this, you have to read 73-page documents, read 21-page bills before you can come and contribute. So thank you very much for joining us. This is not just a task for Paradigm Initiative or any of the organizations in the room. This is a task for the entire civic space in Nigeria, for the private sector, for policymakers and government themselves. And I trust that at the end of the day, we will inch closer to the country of our dreams, where fuel price will reduce. I just had to say that because I know it has nothing to do with the digital economy or with AI, but it obviously does, because everything we discuss here at the end of the day goes towards improving the economy and making livelihoods better. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for the conversation, not just for those who are in the room, but for all those who are also joining us online. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the outtakes that we will get from these conversations. Thank you.
Now I would like to call the next facilitator, Precious Nwadike, to take us through the draft digital economy and e-governance bill. And then later on, we will have a conversation around, the opportunities that CSOs see, what the anticipated outcomes are, and also to discuss about the objectives, how aligned they are with, the application of digital rights in Nigeria.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here to facilitate this session this afternoon. So my name is Precious Nwadike. I am an analyst with Tech Hive Advisory. So we'll just go straight into the business of the day, right? Okay. So it's no longer news, that we are in a technology-intensive era. And it's safe to say, right, that those who don't embrace and manage properly the use of technology may become what we call proverbial dinosaurs. Now, I'm emphasizing the word manage its use properly, right? Because it's important that in the adoption of technology or in the use of technology, in order to gain, in order to be globally relevant, right? And to be able to compete globally, or to be able to compete with the global north, it's important that we really embrace technology. But it's also important that in embracing technology, in embracing digitalization, right? Even in governance, that we manage it properly, right? Now, over, the last couple of years, there's been the proliferation of technology, AI, Internet of Use, and all the other conversations around that. So, but flowing from all this, Nigeria has, under the auspices of the Federal Ministry of Communications, Innovations, and the Digital Economy, have come up with a bill, this bill, right? And this is what we're going to be looking at. So before I continue, I would like to mention the first session, right? The conversation around the AI strategy, I sort of made my job here easier, right? Because a lot of the things that were talked about are things that we would also be seeing here, things that are also mentioned here. So it has really made my work here easier. So, but before we go into the slides, I also want to mention that in the spirit of this bill is not entirely new. And why do I say that? The bill sort of brings together and addresses some electronic process issues that have already been addressed in some other places. For example, consumer protection, we have the FCCPC Act. The use of personal data in the digital space, that is covered by the Nigerian Data Protection Act, and the regulation as well, because the Act did not repeal the regulation, so that still applies. For the validity of electronic e-signatures, the Cyber Crime Act covers that. right? So what this bill is looking at is to bring all these things in one place and then make some other additional provisions, which we would look at as we proceed. Okay, so this is what I have, what we're going to be discussing today. So we're going to be looking at the objectives and the purpose of the bill. Generally speaking, we're going to look at the bill structurally, have an overview of the bill, and then look at key provisions. What are the key provisions that this bill mentions, or what are the provisions that are when you're reading the bill, it jumps at you, right? We're going to look at that. And then we're going to look at the positives, the areas where you're reading the bill and you go, okay, thumbs up, this is good. And the gaps, the areas, right? So we're going to look at that. And then recommendations on the gap. So the recommendations that I will be giving would sort of feed into the general conversation that we would later have. I hope I'm okay. I think I need to hold my mic better. Okay, awesome. We'll sort of feed into the overall conversation that we all will have regarding what recommendations are we making as a CSO and all of that. So let's go into it, the objectives. So the bill itemizes 7 objectives, but I sort of distilled them into, please, next slide. I sort of distilled them into 4, right? There are 7, but just to put them together. And these objectives are great, by the way, on paper. They look great. So the first one is to enhance the use of digital technology such that our export-oriented capacities in the digital economy improves. Great, awesome. Another objective is to enable fair competition. I mean, this makes sense because the global north, they're all mostly technologically advanced. So in order to be viable in the global scene, it's important that we adopt, that we're digital, right? So this makes sense. Improve service delivery and growth for the digital economy, to promote the digital transformation and processes in public institutions. Very important. This is great, but then there are gaps, as we will see when we proceed, and encourage accountability to develop a legal framework that enhances the digital economy and supports international trade and investment. So these are all great objectives. So they're very good. But then let's keep it moving to the next year. So here we're now going to talk about, we're going to have an overview of the bill. I don't know if we're able to, if there's anybody here who has read the bill. Okay, awesome. All right, but this will really help to give you an idea of what the bill generally is talking about, and then key provisions. Next slide, please. So the bill is divided into 4 chapters. We have discussed chapter 1. Chapter 1 talks about objective, scope, and application of the bill. So we've discussed that. So for scope, the bill generally applies to corporations, public, private corporations that carry out digital activities, whether wholly or in parts. So if you're an institution, you're a public institution, you're a private institution, you're an individual, you're an organization, you carry out any activity that is digital, whether that digital activity is in whole or is in parts, this bill covers you, right? So this is pretty much everybody, basically, right? So chapter 2 talks about electronic transactions. Basically, there are 7 parts. So each chapter now has parts, and each part has a couple of sections, right, attached to it. So I won't talk about the sections one after the other because of time, right? That's why I lumped them together so that we can, manage the information, we can properly understand this. So electronic transaction, basically what this part is telling us, it basically just covers the legality of electronic transactions, digital agreements. So it makes provisions for the recognition of e-signature, e-seal, any documentation necessary for carriage of goods, protection of consumers, it covers all that. So if you keep going, electronic contracts. So under this bill, you can enter into contract electronically. It can even be automated, right? The bill covers that. Now next slide. Yes, I already mentioned this carriage of goods, consumer protection. This is what chapter 2 covers. Now let's go to chapter 3. So chapter 3 is talking about digital transformation in the public institutions. So it's basically focusing on public institutions. Remember, the scope of the bill is that it covers both public institutions and private organizations. So chapter 3 narrows it down to the obligations that public institutions have with regards to this bill when it becomes a law, of course. So it's divided into 4 parts. So basically what this part is saying is that public institutions have an obligation to, let me put it this way. If a public institution is required or has an obligation to perform any act, maybe the act is to make a document available, to produce a document, to send out invoices, stamp, to make a document accessible, then anything in that area, right? This bill is saying that that public institution should carry out that obligation by sharing or doing that act in an electronic form. So if they have an obligation to make a particular document accessible to certain individuals, they should do it electronically. If they have an obligation to generate receipts or invoices, that sort of thing, they should do it electronically, right? And so on. So there is also management and operation of digital government. It gives government institutions or public institutions an obligation regarding what kind of how do they manage their digital structure. So we will see things like an obligation to establish an ICT unit in all public institutions, that sort of thing, and also establish an information system cadre, that sort of thing. So there's also digital government infrastructure, tells them what kind of infrastructure you should use. The infrastructure needs to be one that is approved by the regulatory agency, which is NIDA, by the way, and all of that. Then digital government services. If public institutions are delivering service, they should deliver that service electronically, digitally, all of that. Then the last chapter, chapter 4, has, next slide, please. Yeah. So it has 3 parts: offenses or contraventions, miscellaneous, and interpretation. So offenses or contravention, I mean, this goes without saying, it's clear, right? It stipulates the penalty for non-compliance with the provisions of this bill. For miscellaneous, there are 2 sections there. One is the supremacy section, very problematic, as we will later see. And then another section that talks about other regulation, we'll get into that. Then interpretation. So that is that on overview of the bill. So let's keep it moving. Now, key provisions. So the first things first, the bill names NITDA as the regulatory agency. So in the body of the bill, it goes the regulatory agency, and I'm wondering, okay, this regulatory agency, who is this regulatory agency? And then in the interpretation section, it says the regulatory agency is NITDA. So it has made NITDA and I sort of like this, my personal opinion. And the reason is that it did not, as we often see, right? When bills like this are drafted, usually they establish a new agency. But it's great that we are adopting an already existing agency, right? And I mean, this falls within the purview of what NIDA can do or should do, right? So it's great. And it also goes to, I mean, it gives the impression that the drafters of this bill are having in mind the idea that we need to reduce the cost of governance, because establishing a fresh bill will mean that, well, now we have another agency, then we have to have personnel, we have to pay them and all of that, right? So this is great. The next key provision is that it validates electronic documents, contracts, electronic signature. We've talked about that. Which is great for ensuring digitalization of certain processes and making the lives of people easier, sort of. Then it requires e-commerce service providers to be transparent regarding their terms of service, the information relating to their products, information relating to themselves. So they need to also clearly explain to customers who they are, right? This is also a provision that you will see, an obligation that you will see in the NDPA and NDPR, right? So your privacy, you should have a privacy notice, and the privacy notice should clearly state who the controller is, that sort of thing. It also applies here. And they are also supposed to comply with data protection principle. It makes mention of the fact that e-commerce service provider should have a privacy notice and all of that. So that's. Then it introduces a cyber insurance requirement for e-commerce operators. So, I mean, I saw this provision, I was like, okay, how is this going to work? But then it states that NICOM, National Insurance Commission, and NIDA will collaborate to develop a regulation that would see to how this is implemented. I mean, it would be interesting to see how that works out, but this look. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay. It provides the development of a mechanism for online dispute resolution. So now, while, I mean, people say, oh, ADR, why ADR is easier than litigation? ADR can also be tedious if you've been in the process, right? ADR can also be tedious. And it's interesting that this bill is seeking to look for a way to sort of digitalize this process of alternative dispute resolution. However, like the cyber insurance provision, FCCPC and NIDA are going to also collaborate to come up with a regulation that would now specifically state how this is going to go. Also, it will be interesting to see how that plays out and what it will look like, really. Another key provision is that the bill requires that public institutions adopt e-documentation. Well, that one is there, we've mentioned that, and establish an ICT unit. They're also supposed to conduct annual self-assessments of their digital governance initiative, and they're also supposed to maintain a register of ICT resources and use an electronic gazette. There is a lot that public institutions are required to do under this bill. But I mean, when I was reading it, the first thing that came to my mind is how many public institutions as we speak, have the infrastructure to comply with this bill if or when it's enacted? Questions. So the next thing is it provides the creation and accreditation of an information system cadre for public and private entities. Now, what is this information system cadre supposed to do? They're actually supposed to do the very same thing that the ICT unit is supposed to do, which is data management and managing security infrastructure. So the question now is, why do we have them, right? Next slide, please. I think that should be it. Move to the positives and the gaps. Okay, positives. I mean, I don't want to overflog it, or legal recognition for electronic transactions. I mean, out the top of our head, we can just say, oh, if our public institutions and private, I mean, for private corporations, though, there isn't much of a challenge, because already, in order for private institutions or private companies already know that they need to leverage technology if they are to compete globally. So already they have things like this in place. I think but for private guys, what they would need to do is maybe just improve on what they already have. And those who don't have to now begin to look into it. The main challenge is public institutions. I mean, we can just when I read it, when I see public institution, my mind just goes to ministries. You know, ministries, when you just enter a ministry. I don't want to call a ministry, right? Because I'm on camera. But I mean, there are certain ministries where from one desk to another desk to another desk, you're holding paper files, and the process is tedious, right? And these agencies or these ministries, I mean, especially in certain states, right? They don't have the infrastructural capacity to comply, but we will look at that. So the legal recognition of electronic transactions, which would make service delivery easier, make processes easier, make documentation easier. Guessing that the proper implementation of this bill would ensure that in things like digital identity documentation, I have NIN, I have BVN, I have international passport. There's a way that these informations can be collated so that if you already have an international passport, you don't need to go through, I mean, you're going from one agency to another, and then you need to go through the same process all over again. I mean, the implementation of this bill can avert that, which is great. Then there is protection of consumers in electronic commerce. I mean, and then there is a promotion of digital governance and stipulation of penalties for non-compliance. So yeah. So let's move to the gaps quickly. Okay. One is, which I've sort of mentioned, the current level of digital infrastructure. So it's nice that we're having this conversation and we're saying, oh, let's do digital governance, you know, let our government, let public institutions be digital, you know, we're doing electronic stuff, you know, electronic transactions. It's great when you say it and when you put it on paper, but these institutions, do they have the capacity to comply? Now, assuming this bill is enacted, right? We finish this engagement, and then the final draft is taken to the House, and then it passes all the stages of all the legislative stages, and then it's passed. Then what? It's looking like from the word go, some institutions will already be in non-compliance, right? And look at the recommendation. The recommendation I gave, right? Which, of course, we may disagree, right? But this is my thoughts, is that if this bill is passed, if it is passed, it will be great that there is sort of like a transition period between when the bill is passed and when it comes into force, maybe a 6 months, 1 year, or even longer period. And this period will be the time where organizations need to now position themselves, put infrastructures in place in order to comply with the provisions of the, then would be an act, right? Well, we'll talk about that in the recommendations. Let me not jump the gun. Then the next is duplication of efforts in electronic data management with the creation of an information system, except I don't know fully what these guys are supposed to do. I'm not sure why we have them and also are supposed to have ICT units within public institutions. I'm not sure, except I'm the one who's wrong, right? So I see duplication of efforts. So these guys, why are they here? Then the next thing is enforcement of sanction against a public institution. Implementation. It's great that we have a bill, and then in the enforcement, in part, that's part 4, it's penalties for non-compliance. The question now will be, if a public institution is non-compliant, and NITDA, a public institution, imposes a sanction on another public institution, how do you enforce that? Right? It's a question. How do you, the bill doesn't, except you're going to have another regulation, no, but it doesn't really state how are you going to go again, or how are you going to go after another regulation that doesn't report to you, right? So it's a problem, it's a challenge, it's a gap. Slide. Then on the same sanctions, imposition of fines on CEOs of corporate institutions for non-compliance. That section 62, it says that if a corporation is in non-compliance, that the CEO or anybody acting as the CEO will be sanctioned not less than 10 million naira, something like that. And that goes against the principle of corporate liability. So typically, I mean, when I read that section, I was like, typically, if a company is in non-compliance, you sanction the company. I know if there are instances where maybe instance of willful negligence, gross misconduct, you may want to now lift the veil of incorporation and go after the directors or go after the CEO. But those cases should be spelled out. So the sanction should be in a tiered level, right? Where the primary is going to the institution or the corporation. And if there are instances of willful negligence, gross misconduct on the from the CEO or a top person in management, then there's a second tier of sanction on that person. But to leave blank like this and impose sanction on the CEO, I don't think, I mean, it's a problem. Then the elephant in the room, the supremacy of the bill over all other laws on digital economy. It's a problem. I'm on camera, but it's the audacity for me. You know, and it's interesting because the bill makes mention of consumer rights. They move into the arena where the FCCPC operates. They move into the arena where the NDPC operates, right? They move into, protecting data subject rights. They move into, e-commerce vendors need to have a privacy policy, they say all of that, and then come here and say that the bill, this very one we're looking at, which means that if I'm wrong, my litigation, I'm a lawyer actually, but my litigation has been a very long time. So if I'm wrong, you can correct me, right? I know there are some top guys I can see in my ogas. If there is a section in the NDP Act that sort of stands opposed to this one will supersede. And the NDP Act is the primary legislation we have in this country covering data protection. So it's a problem, right? It's an issue. for me that I see, it's an issue. So let's go to the recommendations. I think talking about the gaps, I've also sort of talked about the recommendations somehow. So we'll just look at it. So yeah, I've mentioned this already. So I feel like the bill needs to have a 6 months to 1 year transition period between when it is enacted and when it comes into force, right? It's sort of like what the GDPR did. It was enacted in 2016, and then it came into force in 2018. So that 2-year period was a period where organizations need to now look at the act and be like, oh, we need to put this in place, we need to put that in place before 2018, before the law, the regulation becomes enforceable, right? I think this is something that we can do because currently, public institutions, they don't have infrastructure, right? And if the bill flies the way it is, we're already, from the beginning, we're already in non-compliance. So they should just come out. Then the next one is the creation and accreditation of an information system, CADER. I feel like it needs to be removed where, I mean, it's a great thing that the bill adopted NITDA as a regulatory agency. It's great. Let them not, it's important that they don't use this one to, So if public institutions are going to have an ICT unit, they can always do the job that these guys are supposed to do, or these guys intend to do. The ICT unit within public institution can always take on that rules. And then regarding some of its functions, it can report directly to NITDA and also report to the management of that institute, depending, right? So yeah. Next slide, please. The next. Okay. Okay. Here, measures. So the measures, I'll be very honest. The measures, I do not know. But there needs to be measures. Measures needs to be put in place to ensure that public institutions comply with sanctions. It's important that if a public institution violates the bill, which by then will be an act, there needs to be something in place that will ensure that if NITDA sanctions them, that they hit to that sanction. It's very important, right? What these measures are will be something that we may further deliberate on, right? Then the next one, yeah, I've talked about this. The corporation itself should be held accountable for any breach or non-compliance with the provisions of the bill, which will be an act by then. However, if the bill wants to hold company officers personally liable, it should introduce a tiered penalty structure. Yeah, I talked about this, with the primary penalty imposed on the corporate body and secondary penalties applicable to certain officers in cases of gross negligence or willful misconduct. I've explained this, so we can just move on. Okay, then for this one, the supremacy section. So this is what I think we can do. The bill can just reward that place, right? To explicitly state that the provisions of the bill will be complementary to other relevant laws, such as the NDPA and the FCCP, right? So this is to ensure that there are no inconsistencies and regulatory overlaps. But making these bills stand over and above every other law or regulation regarding digital activities or the digital ecosystem, save for the Constitution, I think it's I don't know, it's not giving what she should give. Okay. I think I have one more slide. Okay, then this is like a general comments addition. So I'll be closing my presentation with this, and this can sort of like spark the conversations that will flow after this, is the development of monitoring mechanisms. So during the interview outside, I sort of mentioned this. It's important that in developing a bill or in enacting a bill or in drafting a bill, it's important that we are able to measure, all right? We're able to monitor and measure our progress, right? And how do we do this? Maybe regulatory impact assessments, monitor and assess what is the position that we are in right now. And then when the bill comes into effect, maybe after 6 or 1 year, we do an evaluation. How far have we gone? Has this bill accomplished the objectives? See the objectives, those 4 things I mentioned when we started. Good. Has this bill, or how has this act, I'm talking futuristically now, right? That the bill is now an act. How has this act fulfilled the objectives that we have set out, right? We need to have mechanisms to measure so that we don't just have, because if it's, I mean, the director, Mr. Benga Shisho, that's his name, yeah. He mentioned this, and it's true. If it's for laws and policy, you know, we have all of that. But our major bane is implementation. So how do we monitor implementation? How do we know that, oh, this is working, this is not working? And if this area is not working, we need to put some things in place to make sure that the objective that we achieve. That's one conversation. Another thing is improving stakeholder engagement. It's great that we're having this conversation, right? And it's also amazing that the responsible ministry, their name is long. Sometimes I get tired pronouncing it. Federal Ministry of Communications, Innovations, and the Digital Economy. You know, they've come up with this bill and they've put it out there for comment. It's great. We applaud their efforts. But I think that, and this is, the world has moved, right? The world has moved beyond, and this is also something I mentioned outside. The world has moved beyond, we prepare the policy, we prepare the draft bill, and then we push it out to you to make additions or subtractions, if you will, if you like. And these comments you make, mind you, they can decide to not take it. You know, it has happened. It happened with the NDPA. People made comments, and then, final draft came out, and there are strategic comments that didn't make the final draft. So it's giving, you can have your say, but we will have our way, that sort of thing. So it's important that when it comes to stakeholder engagement, that stakeholder engagement goes beyond this level where the bill is already prepared. Now we are pushing it to you to see what you can add. It should start from the beginning. We want to develop a bill on we want to develop a bill on the digital economy and e-governance. We call relevant stakeholders together, the government or the relevant agency or ministry, along with relevant stakeholders, sit together and draft the bill from the ground up. That way, we know that the things in that bill are the things that we have collectively agreed on, because we are experts and stakeholders in this space, right? You know, during the first session, there were very, very profound things that were mentioned in terms of gaps. Like the AI strategy did not mention anything on it didn't talk so much on human rights. That would not be the case if there were stakeholders, people like you, in the room when the bill was being drafted. It won't be the case, right? But we are here because they've made the strategy. They've prepared the document, then they've sent to us to say, okay, look at it and see. And I think that needs to change, because it is changing all over the place, all over the world, globally, even with the OECD, their pattern is different. Currently, Mauritius has made a call for comments on its AI policy. like there's a recent, I read it somewhere. And interestingly, I was looking for the draft copy of the policy. There is no draft copy. So they are calling on stakeholders to come and bring in their comments. So that comment is what will feed the first draft. I think it's something that we need to really focus on. And having said that, that will be the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you.
My name is Blessing and I work for Public Digital. We are a digital transformation consultancy who help governments and other public and private complex organizations around the world to better serve their clients. So yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I was not here for all of it. Yeah, I had to do a meeting. But one of the things that you caught is one of the things that I also really care about and think is important. And it's around the accountability of public institutions. It seems that these laws, policies, etc., are usually introduced and it's just applicable per se to the private sector. And then nobody's talking about how we drive compliance as well in the public sector. And I think it's important that provisions, it's important that provisions be made for accountability in the public sector. But then also in addition to that, provisions also have to be made for the ministry or whoever it is that is in charge of that strategy to support public sector compliance. It should not just also be about holding people accountable. First, you need to tell them here are the rules and here's guidance on how you comply with the rules before you then move to, okay, you've done a breach. Maybe we can let you go this first time, but the second time, like, it can never happen again. And so there should be room for that accountability, but then also support so that they're better able to comply and be accountable. It's very, very important. The second thing I would like to talk about is the CADA thing, is the information systems CADA. I sort of agree with you halfway. As someone who works in digital transformation, we found that it's insufficient to just have ICT offices to deliver things when it comes to digital widely. Because ICT offices or groups or teams or units typically focus on a lot on the technology. But then there are other so many like different aspects when it comes to digital generally. And so you need other kinds of skill sets. I would be really, really interested, for instance, in having user researchers within the teams there, but then that's not something you would normally find within ICT. They're probably trying to like, I guess, debug a system or introduce new software. You want people who are able to leverage human citizen centricity or human-centered design to then inform how they tweak technology, I suppose, or how they introduce new processes, etc. You need service designers, for instance. And so maybe I will meet you halfway on the systems CADA, where perhaps if there are ICT offices within these government institutions, perhaps there should be an expansion. So it's not just, they're not just focused on ICT, but then they look at digital more broadly in terms of what other skill sets would you ordinarily find, for instance, within the private sector who are delivering these kinds of things, these kinds of services, and then have them incorporated into those ICT offices. Maybe then rename them something else because it's not just ICT now anymore. I would assume even in this case that you've got data subject experts, you've got products managers who need to be a part of this to make the system work. Again, you were talking about implementation. You can't implement per se with just ICT people. You need people who are driving strategic directions to enable that. And so, yeah, like I said, I'll meet you halfway. So maybe we expand the ICT one, or just generally maybe find a way to move the ICT people into this new system together thing. But I am saying all of this with the assumption that when this was drafted, the thinking was not just to think about ICT people alone per se in this new recommendation that they've made, but to have a more robust, digital teams that help to deliver all of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. So I have some observations actually jotted down while you're making your presentation. So first, I've actually been saying this over time that I am not a fan of having government as a service provider and also as a regulator. So I'm not a fan of it. So if NITDA has to stand as a regulatory body in digital transformation, they should. So we don't want a situation whereby we have NITDA as a service provider. We also have NITDA being the one regulating activities. So, and we've also had that over time across some government agencies, looking at same thing with NIPOST. You have NIPOST, you have NCC, all those agencies within the Federal Ministry of Communications, Information and Digital Economy. So that's one hand. The second one is I also think that for this particular bill to be effective, one way we can actually have it is a kind of reporting system. So for FIRS, you have a reporting system that at so time, organizations submit how they've been able to comply with government regulations. Same with SCUMO. You have the Financial Reporting Council. So if we're talking about, okay, the digital compliance of organizations also, we should have a reporting system, be it maybe annually or so, that they also file to possibly NITDA now, being the regulatory body, to say, okay, fine, these organizations is compliant with the digital transformation. That's when we know that we're actually very serious when it comes to that. And I've actually been, it's kind of dicey on how we want to achieve government organizations, regulating government activities. Yes, so you have possibly, you can't be a judge in your own case. So you have you yourself making the laws, you yourself coming to checkmate yourself again. And we've seen that over time, it's barely worked in the Nigerian context. So, and lastly, when you want to look at generally the issue of awareness, when you talk about a year period between the enacting of the law to the full implementation, I think, yes, it's a good one. Then we could also possibly have a creation of awareness, continuous awareness, like public awareness, so the public knows that, okay, you can carry out tax, or if you can actually do digital transaction and it is actually applicable or accepted within the Nigerian context, and people are aware of it, then you also reach out to relevant stakeholders, and the media has a larger role to play in achieving this particular one. And last, okay, well, I've actually said that. So one of that thoughts that actually came to mind here is at regards the implementation process itself. So I think there is a way we could actually achieve the government not being the service provider. So I discovered that I think NIMC did something of such, whereby they opened the floor for Nigerians to actually have a point whereby they could actually go do their NIMC registration instead of coming down to the NIMC office and trying to do that. So NITDA, now being the regulatory body, could actually accredit some partners to actually make sure that in terms of carrying out some of these services for especially for the government agencies, it's quite, they make it open so that private sector could actually come in to support the implementation of this digital transformation for government agencies and also the private sector alike. So these are my submissions. Thank you.
Well, I think I have two comments. The very first one is, I think it is time we stop thinking that thinking or seeing lawmaking process in Nigeria in their distance of the situation. How do I mean? Laws are actually meant to be for the good of the people, right? But then it's not always the case in Nigeria. Now, I can tell you categorically, EPA you referenced got passed without public hearing. Are you aware? The Cybercrime Act got passed without public hearing. And that's why those laws till date still keep having issues. The 2024 amendment to the Cybercrime Act 2015, in a bid to rectify or to correct an error in Section 24, they created another problem that we still have to, resolve one way or the other. But I think another thing, my second point is this. We need to understand that politicians are politicians everywhere and anywhere. Just as you have politicians and the attitude in Nigeria, same you have in some other climes. In India, before they passed their personal Digital Data Protection Act, there was a section that actually gave the government, I mean, I'm talking about public data controllers, to exempt themselves in any situation they feel like. So, but when you look at it this way, when you raised a very brilliant question as to enforcement of sanctions and imposition of same on government agencies. The truth is, no government agency wants actually to be responsible. It's not even a problem of NIDA. It's a problem that some other agency that may someday or in some situation have to impose sanction of NIDA will have to do that. So what they do is that rub my back, I rub your back. Now, something happened in 2019. Nigerian Immigration Service published the personal data page of a gentleman in Nigeria and in the UK. So we saw it and we felt like, look, you don't have power to do this. The document may remain the document of the federal government of Nigeria, but the data there are actually is. So we wrote NIDA that, look, you need to investigate this matter and look into it. Trust me, NIDA took it up, announced investigation, and that ended there. Whatever they did to NIS, nobody did because they did nothing. And that's a fact. Now, so when you look at all of these situations, until we actually drag them, nothing will happen. Even now, another thing happened. So there was this fund for entrepreneurs by the Ministry of Trade and Investment. We went to the website. We realized that website of a federal government agency doesn't have a privacy policy. So where do you even, we are not even talking about deep privacy policy. It doesn't have it. And you're going to process personal data of millions of Nigerian youths. Then we went to court. We had to drag them to court. Of course, interestingly, the court agreed with us and granted all of our reliefs that what we were doing was likely to violate people's right to privacy. But then the real gist is that if we all want to do is to be having conversation with them, having tea break with them, having tea party with them, telling them you should do this, nothing will happen. These guys don't want to be accountable, whether it's NIDA or any agency. So the likelihood of enforcement of any fine, whatever, will never happen as far as they are concerned. But this is my position. Now, when NDPC started imposing fines, I think much recently they did that against Fidelity Bank. And I said, look, sure you guys are serious, yes. A federal government agency and watch the private data adjusted. They know you are serious when that side of the divide. But if what you do is to start going after private data controllers, they won't take you serious. Currently, I'm actually in court against about 3 of federal government agencies. Interestingly, in their defense was even enough admission for the court to deliver judgment on. And I'm super excited, waiting for what will be the verdict of the court. But I am saying this, until those who are regulators are ready and willing to go after their brothers and sisters, we will never take them serious, and nobody will do.
When you were mentioning something about there is no infrastructure in place, which is a very valid point to make. But I just wanted to put it out there that in Nigeria, even when they make the infrastructure available, the problem will still remain the willingness to actually use them. And I'm going to use the judiciary for an example. When the COVID situation happened, everybody was scrambling around. A court like the ECOWAS court went full virtual, right? We go to court, we take our judgment, everything full virtual. So we tried. I and some tech guys, we developed a solution whereby from the moment you file all the way to the judgment, it will take place in the online space. We try to approach some courts. We try to meet up like National Industrial Court and then the Court of Appeal. We even had a meeting at the Court of Appeal. We were never called back. The tech guy has finally jackpot. Yes, he's gone and he's doing well in the UK because they need him there, right? We don't want
our youth, yeah, then they have them. And now, so, but I am also aware that usually in the courtrooms, you're supposed to have like laptops, you're supposed to have some kind of system, the recording system that makes it easy. But the reality is this: how many of the judges are actually using this? So I'm using that as a parallel to the fact that even when the infrastructures are made available, will there be willingness to actually use this? So we still have a lot to do or a long way to go. But I hope that, of course, as Solomon has already said it, so long as they do not carry the nation along, so long as they do not carry important stakeholders along in whatever decisions they're making, it will be like a merry-go-round. It's just going to be like a cycle all over.
I completely agree.
But my question is this: beyond digital penetration and infrastructure and what have you, are we digitally literate? Can we say we are digital? We are literate, a kind of literate society, digitally just speaking. On a scale of 1 to 10, can you tell me how compliant are we? Because like my brother over there said, I have problem with NIDA being the regulatory agency. And I can tell you why. I have a case with VIO. 5 years ago, they gave me what they call this e-coding, where I don't know if you know something like that. They are standing on the road and chasing moving cars and all that. They don't need to do all that. With technology, they can just, when your car paper expires, they can give you a text message or a call, come and do it and all that. Everything becomes smooth. But because of the corruption in the system, they deliberately refuse to allow that to work. I have a friend who had a contract with the government. A lady in the ministry told her up and plain that, look, nothing concerns me with your document. Why? Because he has not come to Greece or see her person. Others are coming to pay or do what you call a baka and all that. Recently, there's an argument with Nigerian police where they say they can no longer track bandits and the bad guys because their tracking system is no more working. But we went underground and did some research and found out that they deliberately refused to pay. There is a monthly or yearly subscription they have to pay for that system that was developed 6-7 years ago to keep working. But they refuse to pay. So that thing is no more working. So they're telling you now they cannot track bandits because that technology is obsolete, it's no more working. But they refuse to pay the subscription they're supposed to pay. That's the main argument or the crux of the matter. But they can track protesters who are protesting against government and all that, whether they are in the creek or in the village, in rural area, they can get you and deal with you. So I have problem with NIDA being the regulatory agency. Last 2 weeks ago, there's a meeting we had, and it was about the implementation of this Orasanya report. And we are saying, we are naming, this is privileged information, I'm not digressing. Some of these agencies that have to go. And I was there, NIDA was mentioned. VIO, the younger brother of road safety, should go. A lot of organizations like that. So in terms of this NIDA and the rest of them now becoming the regulatory agency, and we are saying like the government is already over-bloated, some parastatals and agencies, in compliance with modern day lean government and the use of leveraging on technology and all that. So where are we with that? Then lastly, I think somebody has already answered that. In terms of ICT in different organizations and institutions of government, what do we have the capacity? Because most times what I see is mere rhetorics, have ICT in every unit and all that. Meanwhile, nothing is working. It would be rather good if we don't have it, because people will be there like they're in NNPC collecting salary and nothing is working. So we just hear name and all that. So I am thinking that instead of going that way, why not completely forget the idea? Thank you.
I think, just to comment the speaker, I think she's done a great job. One of the things I also came across on the bill has to do with the what's that thing again? For CEOs, sorry. The one for CEOs. Sanctions, yeah, thank you very much. And the penalty, the fee. I think for me, this same thing reflects on the NDPA, which no documentation, we don't know how realistic it is. Again, we don't know what it covers. So you don't put that, but I mean, it's a good recommendation you have already. You don't put the CEO in the face. You don't, what about if this happens to a junior officer? What happens? Is the CEO supposed to take responsibility or the organization supposed to take the responsibility? Again, the way the bill was framed for me looks like this was more like on the private sector side. If you look closely to that section, it largely focuses on private sector. I mean, you need to take a second look at it again. Yeah.
What section?
So I mean, it excludes the government for that kind of purpose. And
Is it the sanctions?
yeah. But please, my own opinion, basically.
Yeah, are you in agreement with that?
I'm not sure. I think it's general, right? But because they mentioned CEO, right? CEO is a term you find more in the private sector, right? But my interpretation, I mean, flowing from the top, the spirit of the bill, it's going private, public, right? There's actually a whole chapter dedicated to public institutions and what they're supposed to do and all of that. So flowing from that, I'm interpreting that to also mean head of a government parastatal, right? But I understand why you would think that way, because CEO, right? You just be thinking private. So yeah.
That's part. I just searched for sanctions and it says when a person or body cooperates. For me, I think it was the word body corporates. So if you look at the chief executive officer of the body corporates, it's that key word for me, basically. It says body of the body corporates or any officer acting in that capacity on his behalf. Use the same word about 2-3 times. A body corporates, a body corporates, firm or other associations of individuals who commit an offense under this act is liable on conviction to a fine not less than 10 million.
I think I agree with him because you see the way statutes are worded in our country, if they were meant to include government agencies, they will be expressly mentioned. Body corporates, ministries, departments, and agencies. But I can tell you categorically, I mean, we've actually spoken about the fact that even when they are mentioned, you and I know that there won't be any sanction. We know that. But can you even pretend? We know, I mean, just like someone would say, our politicians lack integrity, but they even lack the wisdom to feign integrity. That makes it worse. So just pretend. Let there be something we can look at on the page. So, I mean, there's no how you can interpret that section that anybody will tell me that government, agency, ministries, and departments are actually included. They are not. They are not, clearly.
Thank you. Any other reflection and also the gaps that you kind of discovered in the proposed draft bill, as well as the mitigations as well, and any measures that she mentioned measures, and if you can think of any measures that you think we can proposed to the ministry perhaps and the relevant stakeholders that are involved in the drafting and passing of this bill. Yeah, I mean, if there's other, stakeholders apart from the ministry, so yeah. But basically we are just to look at the gaps and, if you have any concern with regards to the bill, because at the end of the day, we are collating everything that we are discussing here and then sharing with the relevant authorities so that they can have a second look at the proposed bill and amendments, hopefully.
Okay. So this conversation has really been great, but for last reflections, here is what I will say, that in order to properly implement this bill, we need a lot of things. And the first is national willpower, right? Many people have alluded to it, right? It's one thing to have infrastructure, it's another thing to be willing to use it. It's one thing to say, oh, public institutions, we are going to sanction if you do not do this. It's another thing to follow through on it, right? So first is national willpower, right? We as a people should agree that we want to make this work. I don't know how that's going to happen, but yeah, we have to agree that we're going to make this work. That's one. Two is something I'd actually mentioned before. It was around my last words before the questions, or the comments rather, is that stakeholder engagements. We need to have people like all of us seated here in the room when these bills, these policies, these strategies are being developed from the very beginning. It's not you've cooked up something and then you're not presenting it. It doesn't fly anymore. It doesn't fly. The world has moved past that. So with that, thank you again. And I hope that I'm believing that this conversation will have a fruitful conclusion, right? Thank you very much. God bless you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. And now on to the last part of this conversation, where we go through what we have discussed and what we have agreed on to forward to the ministry and any other stakeholder that is involved in these two important proposed legislations. So the first session was focusing on the national AI strategy, and we discussed the objectives of this strategy, which is to number one, building a sustainable and world-class AI ecosystem, partnership with collaborators such as the academia, leveraging the young people and improving funding mechanisms. Second is the accelerated AI and sector transformation. The third is ensuring responsible and ethical development. The fourth one is the AI governance itself. And the implementation plan of that strategy is focusing on 4 key aspects. One is the governance structure and coordination mechanisms. The second one is the key milestones and timelines. The third is the M&E framework. And the fourth one is the resource allocation and funding mechanism to ensure effective implementation. And the stakeholders we are looking at here are NIDA itself, the academia, Federal Ministry of Education, NUC, Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, Communications, Innovations, and Digital Economy, amongst others. Now, the key discussion points from these meetings, I will start with the gaps and challenges of the strategies. And this is where, if you want us to add anything or to omit anything from the document, please you let us know. Number one, the sensitization and awareness. We all believe that there is currently a low level of awareness and sensitization regarding artificial intelligence, which necessitates its integration into educational curriculum from the foundational stage. Additionally, comprehensive stakeholder involvement in the strategy development process is inadequate and needs to be improved. We all agreed on this one, but if you want us to reward it or you want some addition or omission, please do let us know so that I will do it right away. Great. The second challenge is the stakeholder engagement. While CSOs plays a role, they are not the primary stakeholders in the implementation of the strategy. The government, policymakers, and the technology community can be considered as key stakeholders. However, government actions may also present substantial obstacles to progress. It requires policy intervention, deployment to support the use of AI. Public confidence needs to be built, as sometimes the government undermines public confidence in the use of digital tools. Effective policy interventions and resources are necessary to promote AI deployment successfully as public trust in the digital tools is critical. Now, the human rights and ethical considerations. The intention of the policy aims is to systematically incorporate AI into our operations while carefully considering associated risk as part of an essential dialogue. I should be presenting this, but a human rights-centered approach should be developed to integrate this into the strategy. However, the documents lack specifics regarding practical applications of AI. It does not adequately address challenges, ethical consideration, predictive scenarios, or potential risk associated with its use. The document fails to clarify how AI will be incorporated into our daily lives while addressing serious issues such as human rights violations, surveillance concerns, and data privacy breaches. It does not explicitly define operational boundaries for AI deployment or delineate guidelines for its responsible utilization. The document identifies several associated risks, including potential impacts on individual employment and data privacy concerns. It briefly outlines some of these risks along with corresponding mitigation strategies. While it assesses the overall impact, it does not specifically address human rights issues over relevant use cases. Do we all agree? The fourth one is misinformation in journalism. In the realm of journalism, misinformation remains a significant concern. To combat this issue, platforms such as Dubawa have emerged to facilitate fact-checking. The center, they have developed an audio chatbot designed to verify instances of misinformation propagated by politicians. This tool enables users to access recorded radio conversations efficiently and aims to aggregate historical data related to that. As we advance our use of general programming languages within this domain, we must acknowledge that increased reliance on AI tools may introduce additional risk, even as they contribute valuable resources towards addressing these issues. I think this is an example, not specifically a gap that will be submitted to the ministry.
So I want Adamu Useni Yunusa is saying that I want to make a recommendation in regards to the activity. It's quite interesting and timely. Meanwhile, stakeholders from all angles should be included, irrespective of their status. I mean, everyone has a role to play. We commend Paradigm Initiative for the long history in community engagement on digital transformation, but there is need for strong synergy with local civil society organization networks across the regions. Localization will enable people from grassroots to make effective use of AI through continuous sensitizations using media like radio and other communication channels. That is from Adamu Husseini Yunusa.
I think his point is leaning towards meaningful stakeholder engagement and a proper inclusion in the process that will be noted. Still speaking about the gaps, so the issue of law enforcement has been brought up as well. There should be an ongoing consideration regarding how this strategy can be deployed in law enforcement. The current discourse does not explicitly address its implication for national security efforts. This raises questions about whether the government intends to integrate AI solutions into law enforcement and intelligence operations. It still remains unclear if these agencies were consulted during the development of this strategy. And the last point under the gaps is the issue of vagueness. The document lacks a clear definition of key terms. It is essential to include a concise definition sections that simplifies complex terminology for better understanding. The strategy needs to be simplified. A definition section should be included as well as an abridged version. Additionally, there is an insufficient discussion regarding the mitigation risk associated with deepfakes, as it does not clearly outline the strategies for risk mitigation. Furthermore, ethical considerations need to be addressed in a more comprehensive manner. These are some of the gaps that we have identified. And the mitigation strategies that we have proposed in the rooms are, number one is addressing the digital divide. We believe that there is still a significant digital divide that is yet to be addressed. The advent of AI has transformed the educational landscape and altered the methods by which education is delivered. It is essential to implement strategies that effectively trickle down to the educational system, particularly within the Nigerian context, where technological infrastructure must be prioritized. A thorough evaluation of this strategy's implementation in schools and government institutions is necessary. Does this point adequately address the issue that was raised regarding the digital divide? Of course, we are going to work on the document, but this is one key aspect that we plan to submit. Are we good to go? Okay. The second one is upskilling. Artificial intelligence represents the future of numerous sectors. Thus, it is imperative that we focus on upskilling and reskilling our workforce rather than merely criticizing existing systems or resorting to imitation. Additionally, we must remain cognizant of our cultural context as we embrace these changes. The third recommendation is to have a clearly defined document. To ensure effective outcomes from AI integration, a comprehensive and improved document should be worked on, addressing potential risks associated with its usage. This includes identifying all possible risks and implementing mitigation strategies accordingly, particularly those risks not previously considered in the document, and outlining clear processes for managing them should be included. We also talked about labor and the future of jobs. Regarding labor dynamics, concerns around job loss and displacement increases, particularly in relation to labor protection mechanisms within Nigeria. We must advocate for measures that safeguard workers against exploitation while ensuring fair working conditions free from AI threats. The last one is accessibility of data. There exists an uneven distribution of data availability across sectors, which cannot solely rely on the Ministry of Communication to rectify. Cross-sector collaboration is vital in facilitating accessible data and sharing frameworks so that relevant information can become readily available and prevalent in previous sectors. I can see that the issue of we made mention of, some specific human rights that needs to be looked at, and unfortunately we did not capture that here, but that will be done. So this is all we have for the first session on the AI strategy. Will there be a need for addition now, or omission, or rewarding, repressing, anything before we move to the second conversation? All right, then. So the second session is focusing on the draft digital economy and e-governance bill, where we look at the objectives and anticipated outcomes. The bill itemizes 7 objectives which have been summarized to enhancing the use of digital technology in the digital economy by enable fair competition, improve service delivery, growth, promote the digital transformation of processes in public institutions, and encourage accountability, whereby developing a legal framework that enhances the digital economy by supporting international trade and investment. We have identified 5 gaps. The first one is the current level of digital infrastructure is inadequate. Then there is an issue of duplication of effort in electronic data management with the creation of an information system cadre. The third one is the enforcement of sanctions against a public institution. The fourth one is the imposition of a fine on CEOs of corporate institutions for non-compliance. And the last one is the supremacy of the bill over all other laws on the digital economy. And the bill makes no mention of human rights. Now, our recommendations, the bill need to have, do we all agree to submit to the ministry that the bill needs to have a 6-month to 1-year transition period between when it is enacted and when it comes into force? The argument is that this will enable enough time to set up necessary infrastructure to ensure compliance. Is this our stand? The transition period to be between 6 months to 1 year. Okay. The second recommendation is the creation and accreditation of an information system cadre needs to be removed to prevent duplication effort with the ICT unit. In agreement? Okay. The third one is that measures should be established to ensure public institutions comply with sanctions. The fourth one is the corporation should be held accountable for any breaches and non-compliance with the provision of the bill, with the penalties imposed. And the last one is the supremacy section of the bill should be stated that the bill shall be complementary to other relevant laws. These are 5 of the key recommendations that we have on the document and to submit to the ministry. All in agreement? There is also reflections from the participants, which will be taken into account when we are refining this document. There is an issue of accountability of public institutions, the issue of insufficient to have just ICT officers. There needs to be an expansion of variety of skill sets. There is also independency of roles. the issue of, the government being a service provider and also the regulator, that should be incorporated into, that would be incorporated into the document. And then issue of awareness, which we have discussed, insufficient stakeholder engagement, the issue of digital literacy. Basically, this is the reflections that we have so far captured from the conversation. If you have any immediate thoughts that you want us to add to the document, I will be happy to do that right now. If you also, what you want to speak?
Well, speaking to the issue of, I mean, the effort to remedy or to cure the defect in the issue of supremacy of the bill, I think I would rather even prefer a situation where that particular provision is expunged totally. The challenge with that provision is that, I mean, with the amendment we want to make right now, is the fact that when you make that bill complementary to other existing legislation, that in itself will even create some problems. I'm going to give you an example. This particular bill defines metadata. There's a provision for metadata in the NDPA. Now, the question is, are you saying when there's issue of conflict in interpretation of metadata, we will have to resort to provision of Data Protection Act or provision of this bill? Now, I think, okay, so to buttress that, this particular bills, Cybercrime Act 2015, before the amendment, because the particular section has been deleted. Section 44 says, anyone convicted of any offense under the act shall have their international passport cancelled. Meanwhile, the statute that provides for issuance and cancellation of passports in Nigeria does not even recognize conviction under that same law or any law as a ground for cancellation. So for me, that law, the Immigration Act, does not even need to state that this law shall be supreme, over all other laws, dealing with that matter. It is clear. The drafter of the cybercrime bill might just be mischievous to say, to decide cancellation of passport on conviction under the act. So for me, I think I'd rather prefer a situation where we expunge it. Let's not talk about it. So when issue of data protection comes up, let's deal with it under that law. When issue of strict digital economy comes up, let's deal with it, because data protection can come under digital economy conversation sometimes. So we now look at it that, okay, so what will it mean to have that complementary to?
Okay, yeah, so you can go ahead with the closing remarks.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to, on behalf of Paradigm Initiative, thank everybody who was able to make it for this policy engagement series, including those who are online as well. It was very important that we had the opportunity to have these conversations today and to provide an opportunity to, provide inputs to the initiative of the Federal Ministries of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy. We believe in inclusive policy processes, and we believe that everybody's voices deserves to be heard. And that's why we have put this event together, to say that this is what we think about what the government is doing. And the objective, as I believe has been communicated, is to be able to submit the outcome document from this meeting to the ministry, to say that we conveyed this stakeholder meeting. And these are some of the highlights of some of the issues that were identified during the session. So thank you very much for your industry for bringing those perspectives into the room. And just to also say that Digital Policy Engagement Series is an initiative from Paradigm Initiative, where we engage digital policy processes across Africa. So, we would keep convening meetings like this to discuss policy development across the continent. So please look out for the next invitation around the next policy issues that will be of interest to us as a group and as stakeholders. Thank you very much again. I'm sure the next thing is lunch, so please enjoy your lunch. And for those who, I know there are a lot of people there are a number of people who traveled to be here. Have a safe trip when you travel back, and see you sometime soon. Thank you.
At this juncture, I would like to thank you again for honoring the invitation and for your valuable inputs. And like I have said, we are going to work on the document. We are going to refine the document, and your further comments are welcome. We would like to have them, incorporate them before we submit the outcome document to the ministry. Once again, thank you so much for coming.